Hello, everybody, and welcome again to yet another episode of the Just in Manila podcast. Well, our topic for tonight or for today, whichever part of the day you're listening to this episode, is something that I'm very, very interested. Um, I think I attended all of the committee hearings regarding the topic, and I have been um, extra interested with this up to the extent that I read a lot about it. I've been talking about it through Twitter and amongst other things. So the Committee on Legislative Franchise conducted several hearings and inquiries regarding the House resolution filed concerning SMNI or Sunshine Media Network International. Just some point of clarification, something that I have been reading from social media na parang I think it's mali somehow. Na I just wanted to clarify that the hearings, as mentioned earlier, were just about the House resolution filed by Representative Castro, Brosas, Guinto, and later on, if you will remember, the one filed also by Congressman Nograles. It is important to mention also the privileged speech of Congressman JJ Suarez. During that time, during the whole time, about how many hearings was it? At least three committee inquiries about it. No House bill yet about or for the revocation of the franchise of SMNI. After third hearing, the representative from One Rider Partylist filed House Bill 9710, revoking the franchise of Suarez Media Corporation or repealing RA 8122. Well, we already talked about the issue in length, and the media put substantial emphasis on the citing of contempt, the freedom of the press, clarification about the travel funds, red tagging, among other things. But sometimes it is easier to look at the merit of the measure first. I mean, if we want to understand why is it there's a house bill filed for the revocation of SMNI franchise, the technicalities of it. And I'm sure our guest for tonight is the right person to help us with it, to help us understand the entirety of HB 9710. And I'm super excited to tell you guys, that the author himself of HB 9710 and the representative of One Rider Partylist is here with us. Yes, please welcome Congressman Ramon Rodrigo Gutierrez, or we can call you Congressman Raj, right? Kong Raj.
Yeah, Rodge is
Hello, sir.
fine. Hi, evening.
Hi. Welcome to the show. Sir, before anything else, at least para lang people will get to know you more. Will get to know you more. Please tell us about One Rider Party List, about the measures you submitted, the programs that you have, and the sector that you are representing in the Congress.
All right. Okay. So, One Rider Party List is obviously a party list that's participating in Congress right now. We have two seats. I'm seated as the first nominee, and our second nominee is Congressman Bonifacio Bosita. Our primary industry, our number one constituents are actually the riders. It began as that. But during the election, there were quite a few that were related to transport. They were in the transport industry. Quite a few party lists running, I mean. But those who were seated would only, I think that would just be us and Dumper, at least for the party lists, right? So from then on, as we were doing our duties in Congress, we realized that our constituents were, I wouldn't say limited, no, but it shared a lot of interest with other road users. So it kind of expanded. What originally started as an advocacy for rider safety and education quickly expanded. We were reached a lot of other sectors of the transport industry reaching out to us. So we're talking about the public utility vehicles, the buses, of course, the passengers too, the commuters. I guess not so much, except for the private motorists. Although we seek to represent them too, I guess it's a little. Of course, there would be conflict, no, between the different subgroups of the transport industry, but we try to strike a balance, and we've come to primarily represent that part, that industry. So for one rider party list, some of the measures that we filed, well, currently we're working on the committee, the Fair Traffic Apprehension Act. We're seeking to make it, we're trying to uh, make it level between the enforcer and the, I wouldn't call them victims, no. The, yeah, well,
The
it's hard.
drivers.
It tend yeah, right, the drivers, the riders, the motorists, sometimes it comes out as victim because we heard all of these horror stories of
Yes.
enforcers taking advantage of the authority that they have, and we seek to, have a level playing field for them by actually requiring them to have share the burden of proof. Anyway, sorry, it's pretty technical, no, but
Yeah,
I mean, it's
it's
going to the
okay.
specifics of that bill. But yeah, we have that Fair Traffic Apprehension Act. We've also filed the National Traffic Centralization Act, where we wanted to have oversight over what we call the no contact apprehension. I don't know if
Yes,
you
yes.
recall, just that was quite an issue quite
Oh,
a while
okay.
back. We also filed what else did we file? Motorcycle Parts Retail Protection Act, where we want to protect our motorists for purchases that they bought, which are actually found not to be compliant with LTO regulations.
Wow.
Um, quite a few. Mostly,
So
those
you're
are, I guess,
quite
the
really,
primary
yes, and you're
bills we
quite
filed
busy
for.
then
Yeah.
talaga. Yes. One thing that I can share to our audience from an outsider's perspective is how active you are when it comes to committee hearings. As in, Congressman Rodge would stay there the whole time and then listen intently to what is happening. And I think the last committee hearing where I saw you and Congressman Busita would be the PUV modernization inquiry in the House just recently, just a few days ago, with upon this recording. Well, anyway, Congrod, a lot of people are saying that nakikialam ang Kongreso when it comes to the SMNI issue. Because at least on social media or especially sa Twitter or sa X, they cannot understand um, they cannot understand the idea of legislative franchises, the whole committee itself.
Mhm.
So, all throughout the hearing, paulit-ulit naming naririnig as an audience or observer there, we have been hearing the fact that it's a privilege that the Congress grants. Can you explain to us what is that about? Bakit ba siya privilege lang? And what is legislative franchises? So people can appreciate more. Bakit ba interesado or why is it the mandate of the Congress to hear about this?
Well, I guess to make it easy to understand for the layman, we have the government provides us rights. We have rights under our constitution, and these are things, karapatan. These are things that we can expect that we will be allowed to exercise no matter what. And anything that we are able to do outside of those rights would actually then be depending on the state providing or allowing it, in which case we could call them privileges. And there are some specific privileges that are explicitly mentioned in our constitution. So when we say that, the constitution being the primary law of the land, it is the will of the sovereign. It means we as a people have decided that this is what we will abide by. The constitution provided that the grant of legislative franchise is one such privilege that is explicitly lodged with legislative power. Legislative meaning, well, okay, really quickly, for those that are unaware, the government has three co-equal
A
branches. You
bench,
have the
yeah.
executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. And I could understand that there would be quite some confusion sometimes. And they would actually, even in SMNI, no, we'd notice like a big talking point for them would be admin, and then those in the government who are not necessarily aligned with the administration, and they
Yeah.
would talk about it as if it's such a bad thing. But we have to understand that this is actually a byproduct of democracy. Being a democratic country, that's really how it runs. Sometimes the executive runs a different course from the legislative, and this is part of the system of checks and balances that we have. I might be straying, but when we're talking now about the privilege, this is one such check and balance that's allowed. okay, you have your rights, right? You have the right to property. You can expect that no one can take property away from you.
from you.
But when you enter into the realm of public utilities, for example, media, the Constitution, we as a people have decided that media is such an important part of our society. Even back then, with our founding, well, I wouldn't call them founding fathers yet, no? 1987 Constitution isn't that long
Institution.
ago. But for us, siguro just, no, those who were not born yet then,
Yeah.
um,
Medyo founding father
uh,
level.
yeah, I mentioned founding father level. It's the only constitution we know, and we know that when it was when they had that constitution made, they already had the foresight, the wisdom to say that okay, media is a very powerful tool. Wala pang social media, no. They're just talking about
Yes.
radio, print,
TV.
TV, and they saw how pervasive it was in society, and they said this is something very powerful. We have to have it regulated. Now, where the question of whether or not this is supposed to be explicitly in the executive or not, I guess it was answered in the negative because they gave it to Congress. They
Yeah.
deemed it that if we notice, everything comes from representation. The president is voted by all of the people, but when you go to Congress, it's more granular.
Yeah.
Congress is supposedly represented by the winners of every district, plus party lists for a broader representation.
Petition.
So it should give you a wider grasp of where the people are coming from, that at least
Yes.
everyone's voices would be heard. So I would guess that's why the Constitution granted the legislative the power to grant these franchises. So there we go. It's a privilege that the Congress grants,
Grants.
but it comes with the correlate. It comes with the power also to take back. No, when it very explicitly, I think it's Article 12. It mentions that these franchises are granted on condition that Congress can at any time amend, alter, or repeal. So I guess that's where some of the confusion would lie. They would say, bakit? As you said, just right? Bakit
Yeah, but
nakikialam yung
nangingialam
Congress?
ang Kongreso. Well,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
fact, it's
alam.
yeah, it is parang binigay pala talaga siya sa legislative to grant this privilege, especially in a public utility like media. All right. So, Kong, of course, you're aware that ang daming, alam mo yun, it's been daming issues revolved around this. So when committee passed the House resolution of Representative Nograles, yung urging NTC to suspend SMNI while you are investigating, where you are in inquiry regarding all issues sa kanila. Do you agree with this measure? I mean, parang we both know, or everyone who's listening to us would know that sinuspend talaga siya na NTC. And meron din yung MTRCB. Do you think that that is necessary as you conduct hearings, or hindi naman talaga, or okay lang na hindi?
I would say necessary. I wouldn't call it necessary, but this was something that well, we saw now that we voted in the affirmative. So it was something that we saw as right, as correct.
Mm.
Necessary would presuppose like kailangan na kailangan, no? But I wouldn't want to say no, we're always right. But from what we saw, um, people have to understand. Okay, there's a timeline, right? There was the resolutions filed by Congresswoman Castro and the other
Yes.
Kongs, and then there was the privileged speech by Congressman JJ Suarez.
JJ, yes.
We already started hearing that when Congresswoman Nograles filed her resolution for suspension.
Yeah, I think after the
So
first hearing, right?
after the first, you have to understand. So what was happening was with the first resolution and the privilege speech, we were just in the discovery phase, right? We were just investigating. And when we saw that damage was done and was continuously being done, and from what we've seen, that despite, okay, I'll be frank with you, just what they're saying in the committee is different from what's happening outside. When they tell us one thing, when the lawyers say one thing in the committee, and then they use the same platform that we are deliberating to further propagate. I'm not I mean, we don't have the
Yes, yes.
monopoly on what's correct or the truth, but what we saw as, fake news, what we say, then we saw, okay, maybe we need to do something right now. So that's when Congresswoman Nograles thought something to do, and everyone agreed. I believe we voted
Affirm.
unanimously on that sa committee. So that passed committee level quite fine. But it was only after that that I filed the HP House Bill 9710. Actually, I say we because, like for example, Congresswoman Nograles and those who were with me in the committee, we kind of felt that something had to be done.
After
I
everything
guess
that you
ako
said.
lang yung parang we can't wait. Actually, this is something that I debated with Congressman Nograles. I said, okay, you can file your resolution for suspension, but then what? Do they even have the power to suspend? Well, we found out later on that they do, no? Because after filing the resolution, the NTC decided to suspend. But I think it's 30 days lang per program. So pending the decision, I said, let's exercise our power
Yeah.
granted by the Constitution. Let's revoke it. If I mean, for me, there's nothing lost. That's the nature. Something that the public has to understand. I guess just because we file a resolution doesn't mean that's a sentiment of all of Congress.
Yeah.
Resolutions are filed every day from the most important unanimous sentiments to the most mundane and would you say niche. Um, I filed this resolution, this bill now because I wanted to put into action the actual provisions of the Constitution on oversight over legislative
This one.
franchises. When I filed it knowing very well that this might not pass. Not everyone, they might not agree with the
What you said.
full revocation of the
Yeah.
SMNI, but I filed it because I mean that's the purpose of the committee, to thresh out. The mother committee is supposed to thresh out these issues on whether or not it warrants even a votation on the floor. So yeah, that's what we did, and that's the
We
timeline basically of what happened.
But just to reiterate what you said earlier, hindi pa nito pinag-uusapan during the hearings. Ito parang you filed it after the third hearing and wala pang hearing about this specific House Bill 9710. So parang nandun pa lang tayo sa discovery phase doon sa mga sinasabi nila, sa sinagot nila, and the documents that the committee requested amongst and then the questions diba of the of you and the other representatives. When I've read the House Bill 9710, it's very specific. I guess it's very specific kasi parang it's amending, ay repealing pala. It's repealing RA 8122. Kung I have a very, I don't know if this is an easy question, pero yung the laws the law na parang granting legislative franchise to different media corporation, iba-iba siya. Iba-iba yung laman, or is it the same?
Well, generally they try to follow a format, you know.
Yeah.
But that's only because of like it's not really a hard and fast rule. It's custom, but every legislative branch that passes through doesn't mean they follow a format, but that doesn't mean that's the end product that will be passed by the committee. Technically speaking, we could make each and every franchise, even amongst equals, let's say they're both media corporations, they're both serving the same jurisdiction, or they're of the same size, capital. We can make them wildly different if we feel like, okay, this media company we'd like to make public all of it. Yeah, okay, you have to make 70%. This media company, we wanted to report twice a year. If for some arbitrary reason we have that, we have that sentiment, we could pass that if Congress wants to. But yeah, but it's
It's
there has
basically
become a regular format when filing, but we can tweak it as we go, and that might have been what happened if that's the question, just no, for the differences. But I would say the primary difference will probably be from the period. I think it changes with every Congress. That's what I've heard. Like
from
depending what.
the nature of the yung parang who are seated, who are the people, yung parang how is it in Congress? Is that what you mean?
Not necessarily. Let's say for the 17th Congress, a certain format was being used by the committee, and by the 18th
Mm,
Congress, they realized, okay, there were some provisions in the 17th we didn't like, because problems crop up all the time.
yeah,
No,
so
there's
we add,
always a
we tweak.
legislative franchise issue. Yeah, maybe that this new franchise. Oh no, this was the previous Congress, pala. This was 18th Congress,
18th,
so maybe it was tweaked.
2019.
from the 2019, the year 2019, that was the 18th
Yeah.
Congress. Maybe they tweaked it based on something that happened before. And the same way, I understand from the committee that the current format that we have now in the 19th Congress is different from the 18th because of big issues like, for example, ABS-CBN. But one thing that's
Yeah.
common between them all the time, every time, is that we always mention that, okay, we're granting this franchise, but remember, Article 12 of the Constitution, anytime we can amend, repeal, modify. So that's something that's never lost. And even if, actually, I find it redundant, even if we don't say that in the bill, we still have that power. But I guess to make it very abundantly clear, it's always part of the bill.
Yes. Thank you so much. Kong, for the information of our viewers, you are a lawyer, right?
Yeah,
You're
I
a
am.
lawyer, yes. So maybe you can explain to us a lot about the technicality na nandun sa House Bill 9710. Let's start, Kong. And I followed how it is, how it is written, para I feel like baka ito yung inuna kasi this is more weight. So, Kong, can you briefly tell our listeners about the violations of SMNI regarding Section 11? So, yes, I think
Right.
this is they failed to comply after 29 years. Wait, in RA 8122, which is passed in 2019, as stated in your bill, SMNI failed to comply after 29 years. Bakit ngayon lang natin to pinag-uusapan? But first, let's, sorry ko. Let's, maybe you can explain to us what are the violations of SMNI in Section 811.
Okay. Uh, I'm glad you asked this just now because there's something that's quite confusing for them, especially when they tend to they lump sum the whole thing. They tend to generalize what's happened. Well, first and foremost, before I go into which sections are which, I think it'd be easier to for people to think of it as parang they were given a lot of things to comply with, and there were transgressions. But you can basically categorize them into two. On one hand, and you're right, actually, I explicitly put it first because I wanted to work with technicalities first and foremost, legalities. Yung hands down, I think for us, it's not subject to interpretation. The corporate issues that they have, we have Section 11 and Section 12. We have Section 10, 11, 12. I think, actually. Hold on. Hindi naman to exam, no? I can take a look. Let me look at the bill
Of
that we
course,
have.
God.
Section 10. Yeah, right, right. So Section 10, 11, 12. We have there for, well, we'll go into them one by one, but I would call these the corporate transgressions, I guess. And then you have Section 4, which this is what people mostly argue about, I guess, that it's more subjective about the content, yung sinasabi nating fake news. But we still feel like there's a violation there. But although to settle the matter so that we don't we can have the discussion, of course, about whether or not section 4 is violated, but clearly 10, 11, 12 in our eyes is violated, so we start with that. So as for your question, section 11, okay. Section 11, dispersal of ownership, right? So in the bill that we for the bill, sorry, it's actually a law now, right? For the law and the franchise of Suarez, so there's actually a requirement that they offer 30% of their stock to the public. Why is this important? I'm guessing the intent here is that to prevent precisely not monopoly in the industry, but for it to be to avoid it being monolithic, a monopoly within the corporation itself. You have to make it open to the public for two reasons, I guess. One, to liberalize ownership, that other people might have a say in how it is run. And second, I guess, to spread also the economic benefits, because understandably, for a lot of legislative franchises, it is commercial in nature. So you have stock price increase, dividends, equity that have to be considered, and you want to spread that down, trickle down effect, the ideal capitalism. So I guess that's why. Okay, Section 11, we can say there was a violation here because they did not offer 30% to the public. They were really relying on that last sentence, where the public offer of shares is not applicable. They should apply other methods, and they just impose upon themselves. They wrote to us,
Yes.
not a different letter, by the way. They included it with Section 12, part of their annual reporting requirements. They said, oh, so dispersal of ownership, we can't really sell shares because we aren't for profit. So we just made a cooperative. we feel, I feel, okay, this is my bill. I feel that, this is, how do you say it? They were being very, our friends, the lawyers of SMNI are good friends, Attorney Suplico, and no, I'm not sure if he actually was with them at this time, but I understand where they're coming from, that they would claim that as a defense. But we feel like, you know, um,
It's
it's
a
in
scapegoat.
retrospect. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kong. I'm
Oh yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, yeah. Sorry, sorry. Medyo my is my call this, my earphones are kind of weak. Please let me know. But yeah, see, the defense that they were saying is that, oh, we actually asked Congress and you guys didn't answer, so we went ahead and did it.
I
So
remember that. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's what happened basically. They're saying the provision was clear, like 30% you have to make it public, and they're like, we've been writing to you for 4 years now, you didn't reply, and just last year we did the cooperative, and then we found out, like, for the previous franchise that they had also had that provision, not Section 11 at the time, it was Section 9, I think. It was democratization of ownership. But here's one thing, just you want to talk technical, diba?
Yeah, of
Something we have to
course.
consider is that in the previous bill it was not ipso facto revocation. Okay, this is another thing that we're struggling with in the committee, because another reason why we believe the corporate transgressions are heavier is that they are the only uh, provisions to carry the ipso facto revocation, provision. Ipso facto meaning, but okay, I'm really bad with Latin, but I guess it's just like by the mere fact it is revoked.
Yes.
So actually, a debate that we had was, do we have to file anything? Because when you say ipso facto revoke, if there's a finding of fact that they violated this, they just poof, they're gone. It's done.
Ah,
Supposedly, ipso facto, that's what you think. But a more moderate interpretation would be, okay, someone still has to file this with court. The court still has to say, all right, we will interpret this provision, and seeing that there is
you
transgression,
violated it.
you will be revoked, and then it will be like the court decided to revoke. I'm still
Mm,
I understand that there was a case filed into court by the lawyers of SMNI, and I do hope that they touch on this issue, because this is very interesting for us lawyers now. This would set very interesting jurisprudence. But on our end, on my end, at least the way that I see it, well,
well, that's
damage is being
happening.
done.
Yeah.
Let's still, exercise our power na lang, and then let's see the ipso facto.
Yes.
But all that to say, the current provision has ipso facto. The previous provision requiring 30%, and this is, 30% stock talaga. Walang sinabi dito na parang
Mm,
whatever is applicable. The provision before said 30% shall be offered to the public within 3 years, I think, and
mm-mm.
walang nilagay na ipso facto revoke. So to be fair with them, I think this was brought up na if there was this violation in the past, why were they not revoked? I guess
Yes.
to be fair, because it's a provision in Section 11, but I guess it was not accorded that importance. They did not feel that it was worthy to be granted that ipso facto revocation portion. No, but in the new franchise, specifically dispersal of ownership, and it says, as a level of non-compliance therewith shall render the franchise ipso facto revoked. So it speaks volumes of the importance of dispersal of ownership. So putting them together, okay, you failed to follow Section 11 now, and historically you did not follow its predecessor, Section
Yes.
9. You did not offer 30%. I don't think there's any intent on part of Suarez to
To
actually
follow it.
democratize their ownership. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So the lawyer saying now that we actually wrote a letter and we complied. Number one, self-serving. I think it wasn't really a topic taken up specifically. They never followed up on that letter. It wasn't an independent letter, just it was part of Section 12. Section 12 is annual reporting requirements.
Yes.
So it's like every year you do your taxes. For example, right? You file your
Yeah.
taxes. Tapos may naka-attach lang doon na parang, by the way, I don't agree with the taxes. I'm not gonna pay it.
So it's
What you
not a
should do is
different
like,
letter. It's an attachment to
it
the
should be,
annual.
yeah, it's an no, it's actually a requirement of the annual reporting requirement. So it's
Ah,
actually, to be more specific, it's like on your tax document, you just wrote na lang there na parang, I don't agree, I won't pay, hoping, and then you filed it. As compared to what should be done, I guess, it's like you file your tax, whether you like it or not, and then you
and
have a
then
separate issue. You tell them, call their attention, BIR, I don't agree with this. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
Didn't happen.
So-
Didn't happen here. So that's why 4 years went by. 4 years that they filed the same letter, and then the last year lang was when they did this cooperative, which again I would question, is that even public participation? Because Jesus Christ Workers Members Cooperative, that
It's
isn't
within them
offered
as
to
well.
public. Yeah, right. I think it would be their employees. So it's
Yes.
like saying, like, to democratize this corporation, the we'll offer it to the public, but you also have to be part of the church first. So, you know,
Yes. Parang
and even worse, we found out that the Jesus Christ Workers Members Cooperative does not even, okay, it does not comply with 30%. It's 0.19%. And even
0.19.
then, yeah, not even 1%. 0.19% lang of Swara. And the ownership of Jesus Christ Workers Members Cooperative was the holdings company. It was
Grabe.
I forget if it's a holdings company or yung executive pastor. It speaks volumes because, like, they have so many these are corporate level, tactics to maintain control. This is something I've seen in
Yeah.
private practice. Never did I think it would be applied to, public franchises. So,
But
that's why we feel like Section 11 was a violation.
yes. Grabe. I watched the whole committee hearing, pero listening to you, I've learned a lot. Na. So, have we touched na po the section 4 of it nung bill mo ng HB 9710, yung
Oh,
violation that they sa section 4.
okay, right. So Section 4 naman, hold on. I'm gonna cheat on this exam. I need to know what I'm talking about.
Kong,
Section 4.
ano lang to.
Yeah, I know that. But when you're used to it, sometimes when they interview, they're like, if you take a look somewhere, it's like you don't know what you're saying. But if you want to be technical,
Yes.
it's not about knowing, like, offhand. It's just about memorizing the section. Anyway, I digress. Okay, Section 4. We're talking about responsibility of the public. So there were other corporate transgressions, by the way, just. So aside from
Yes.
11, there's also 10 and 12. But to answer your question, in Section 4, this is not, we're talking about things substantive.
Mm,
Section 4, this is more on the fake news. Let me look for the specific provision that we were citing. It's talking about granting free of charge, etc., public service, promote public participation, promote audience sensibility, etc., not to use its stations and facilities for broadcasting obscene or indecent language or speech, act or scene, or for the dissemination of deliberately false information or willful representation to the detriment of public interest, to incite, encourage, or assist in subversive or treasonable acts. I feel like, when we were
if
discussing this in the committee, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, go.
No, no.
because
Okay.
because basically the things that you mentioned, all of us saw videos of that. I mean, okay, check. I have a video in mind when it comes to obscene. What was that? All of the things that you actually
Yep.
mentioned, not just the fake news. Ang daming ano yun eh. Ang dami mong sinabi na parang, okay, meron siyang equivalent and it's all over social media. So, do
Right.
you think, pero by section 4 alone, if we don't have the other sections that you mentioned, 11 and, I sorry, 11, 12, and 10, is that enough na parang for the franchise to be revoked?
I wouldn't say they're fish in the barrel. I wouldn't say it's like it's a done deal. With Section 4, it could be grounds for revocation. Going back to the simple concept that constitutional power, privilege, franchise is granted to Congress. So anytime we see a violation, even if it doesn't say Section 4, even if it's not ipso facto revocation, or it's so powerful that even if by a whim, just if we feel like this isn't complying with anything, even if they didn't have any violations in the bill, but if Congress should decide na parang, from what we see, there are acts that they're doing that are borderline violations, but they're getting away with legalities, we can cut them right there. because
Oh,
precisely
wow.
the Constitution provides that we have that power. Anytime, appeal, alter, modify. But
Wow.
we never do that because we try to be fair.
Yes.
And in Section 4, I would say it's being more than fair because in Section 4, during the committee hearing, they only focused actually on dissemination of deliberately false information, willful representation. But you said it yourself, just the other portions, obscene or indecent language, speech accuracy, or
Yes.
detriment of public interest that is inciting, encouraging, or assisting in subversive or treasonable acts. There seem to be,
A lot of it.
you know, there seem to be a lot of that, which is a stark contrast to. I'll be honest with you. At first, I didn't quite find SMNI to be offensive. Um, didn't think of it that way back then, but I think it was because it was pro administration at the time. If you remember previous administration, although I was still
Yeah.
studying in law school, no, so I wouldn't really say I was immersed in it yet in the
Yeah.
political scene. But from what I saw, like, okay, this is you might say ultra right wing, super pro admin, but that's it. And they would the red tagging it would happen now and then, but you know, I guess they must have basis because the person talking is a USEC with the NTF LCAC.
Yes.
So they probably know what they're saying. But now that they are no longer in position, but they still,
Do that.
talo pa nila yung current LTF and NTF LCAC.
Yeah.
Talo pa nila yung parang sila pa, they would still tag them as a media outfit, no longer coming from any information. Since we're talking about it, the violation, si Miss Badoy
Yeah.
mentioned that they have basis for calling out, for example, Representative Abante. She had basis to call him a communist or leftist, or I forgot the specific term. But she never provided it. She never provided documents that NTF LCAC had actual verifiable A1 information that Congressman Benny Abante was supporting the left. So,
Walang
walang
na-submit
ganon.
sa committee,
Walang
Cong.
nasubmit, walang nasubmit. So, in fact, Miss Badoy forgot that she actually red tagged Congressman Abante. So if you think about it that way, I would say that there's a violation there. They still, I, I I was invited a few times to SMNI, and I appreciated it. They had me in this program, something about Pulso ng Bayan, and I appreciated it because they allowed us to talk about our advocacies, which is what any media outlet should do. But for when they repurpose it, when their own programs now, they use it to spread misinformation. I would say that's a violation of Section 4. It's no longer serving, the public interest. Yeah, going back, no, the specific violations that the committee was talking about was the red tagging and the fake news. But you look
Yes.
at it right now, they continue to do so even when they're suspended. They're still broadcasting online. They're talking
Yes.
now about this destabilization,
Yes, they're talking
destabilizing the
about
government.
that and
There's
not
of
paying
that.
taxes. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
and
even air that not paying taxes, and then they give this um parang super long airtime sa mga dating PMEers. Those are the things na parang, okay. Pero Kong, I distinctly remember you asking former Yusek Badoy, when is it your opinion at kailan is it the position of the government? I remember you asking that. Tapos, parang she's been saying na they have intel from former cadres, etc., etc. Pero, even after, you're right, even after wala na sila sa position, they're still doing it, claiming that they have intel, they have information regarding that. And that for me, yun talaga yung mga bagay na ano, na parang bakit mo nasabi to? Well, in fact, a lot of people are listening to your words. Sabi kasi ito ni Lorraine. Sabi ko sa ni Ka Eric. A lot of people are saying that because in previous administration, they are considered as legitimate sources of information because they have positions, right? So, ayun. Kung what else about the House Bill 97110 can you tell us for us to be able to understand it more? Section 12, do you want to talk about that?
yeah, well, I guess, yeah, you said it right now, just it's really quick now on Section 4. Like, I
I'm
think that's a
sorry.
big confusion because they still capitalize on yung dating USEC, so what she says is the truth. But it says a lot when, I'm part of the minority, and there are a lot of things in the administration that I might not necessarily agree with. but you
Yes,
don't see me calling them communists. It's weird now that on one hand they were really pro administration, and then in the next they're now saying that the government is in cahoots with the left, that the left has
yeah,
infiltrated. It's These are wild accusations. So where do we draw the line? Don't get me wrong.
of
I
course.
encourage criticizing the government. I
Yeah,
encourage utilizing media to speak out our opinions, but let it be based on
facts.
professional journalism. Yun yung issue natin. Hindi yung, I don't know if you've seen the things that they were posting while they were talking about, they talk about professionalism, but then you see these pictures of like different government officials with horns, tapos, and the was this CPP NPA supporter. There's no basis for that. Why would you
There
speak
are
that way?
even
So I think that's, yeah.
yes, Kong, just to interrupt you, you remember the parang, di ba, there's a speaker's hall where people can eat and dine, right? And then they have a picture, the speaker has a picture with Congresswoman Brosas and former congressman then. That was their only basis for saying that the speaker is in cahoots with CBP, NPA, NDF. That was as in the ano siya, parang circulating in social media pero the source of information are the people na parang iniisip nila is the legitimate source of information because of their previous position in administration. So, oh no.
You're
Anyway,
right, right. That's precisely why we have Section 4, because you have that responsibility to the public, and I feel personally that this is a very big transgression, and this alone. So to answer your question, going back at it now, yeah, Section 4 alone, after going through everything that they've done and have been doing, I would revoke them on that alone. I really could, but we'll have to rely, of course, on yung constitutional provision. It isn't as as legal dead to rights as compared to the corporate transactions. Which, going back to, no, like you mentioned, section 10 and 12, just really quickly to give an idea. Section 12 is a reportorial requirement. So every year they're supposed to report to us. They're supposed to give us documents for us to exercise oversight. Because you can't exercise oversight without knowing what's going on in the ground with these corporations. And we feel definitely there is a violation here because, number one, the GIS, the General Information Sheet, is a document filed with the SEC by corporations yearly. And it's supposed to
okay.
give you a screenshot, a snapshot of the ownership, capitalization, to give you a rough idea of how the corporation is doing. So that at any time you can pull it up, take a look, how is this related to any transactions that they feel they might find. Would you believe that the GIS they submitted to Congress is different from the GIS they submitted to the SEC?
Yes, I
Apparently.
heard about it in committee. Let's just emphasize that. Magkaiba yung sinubmit nila sa Congress at saka sa SEC. Is it criminal or not really?
I wouldn't say criminal unless, we prove that it was used to, gain something by deceit, perhaps, that maybe a staff or something like that. Um, Obviously
Pero
not
that's
public
ano
domain.
na,
I wouldn't know if
that's
it's. I wouldn't say if it's definitely
yeah,
maybe
yeah, I'm
not criminal, but
sorry.
definitely going to be penalized by SEC. That's for sure. They can
Mm,
be penalized. I don't know. I wouldn't call it criminal because a criminal means like you go to jail and all that.
yeah,
While
yeah.
it could be just a violation of civil provisions. But definitely, I think on one hand it's really bad. It speaks volumes. When there's two different GIS, speaks volumes. Na parang linalaro nila yung documents. But
Mm,
more important for me sa Section 12 is the finding, like, okay, the GIS has this portion for beneficial ownership. It was a new provision by the GIS to make it easier, like, cause like I told you, sometimes corporations make use of like shell tactics, like shell corporations or holdings companies to um, hide ownership, or perhaps to for legal reasons rin. It could
mm,
be to separate assets of a group of people versus one person, or versus vis-a-vis the corporation, to limit liabilities. It's normal. It's not criminal, okay? But there is that provision in the JS where you have to disclose, at least if down the line this is all aggregately controlled by one person, two persons, you have to at least mention them.
mm.
What's interesting to see is that for the past how many years it was, Pastor Kibaloy, and then they claim later on
Biglang
that
wala
it's
na.
now Pastor Akobo. But that timeline does not match with the timeline of the holdings company share changes. Neither
Mm,
does it match with the declaration of the beneficial ownership. There's a timeline kasi na parang, okay, let's say 4 out of 5 years, Pastor Kibulo yung owner ng executive pastor, but only 2 out of 5 years yung actually pastor divest yung shares yung executive pastor. But for 3 out of 5 years, na different years naman, that's when they said it was Pastor Kibulo yung owner, and then the 2 year, parang
yeah.
linalaro eh. You could say
Mm-mm.
that it's simply a mistake. I mean, not you couldn't say that, but that's what I think they will say. They will say now it's a mistake. It's confusing because we don't understand, beneficial ownership, how that works. But in the context of Section 1011,
That's
there's
very
a
big deal.
big issue, which leads back now to Section 10. No, Section 12 kasi is the reportorial portion alone. It's reporting of these documents. Now, Section
Mm-mm.
10 regarding the sale, lease, transfer, grant, or use of assignment of franchise. Okay, I believe there are two portions here kasi. But definitely what was violated, it says here, like, you shall not sell, lease, transfer, grant, use of fraud to any person or transfer the controlling interest
Parang kailangan
without
as
prior
I
approval.
yes,
Yep.
I remember Congressman Nograles saying that they need to submit that first to the Congress before change in ownership. So that by
Right.
itself is
Um,
a violation.
yeah, the
Dami na
first
ko.
portion, they're saying na parang if you're going to change controlling interest, so that means in the classical sense, that's 51%. If you divest or if you change ownership 51%, you need prior approval of Congress. We feel that this was violated because it, it's confusing because on one hand, it might not be violated if they did not transfer. But then they themselves said that the pastor is no longer Pastor Kiboloy, right?
Yes, a
It's now
part of.
Pastor Akobo. So with that transfer of the controlling interest, it should have required prior approval, right? But
Mm.
then they're also arguing that corporation sold, it's only a holder. But then if that were the case,
Yeah.
how come it didn't say in the beneficial owner? It's really
Yes.
complicated. But the way that we see it is that they did not ask for permission. But even if, let's say, okay, granted, it wasn't in a sense transfer of controlling interest that would require prior approval. But you did
Mm-mm.
not give us this the here, for example, I'll be specific. Congress shall be informed of any sale, lease, transfer, grant, use of or assignment of franchise or merger of the controlling interest of grantee within 60 days after completion. Fail to report to Congress such ownership shall render franchise ipso facto revoked. So here, okay,
So
let's say, sorry.
dami na pala ng violation that doesn't actually require anything na talagang mare-revoke ta.
Yeah,
Is it?
we feel it that way.
Yeah.
Section 10 is another. That's why I told you, like, the corporate, despite not being, it's not the sexy provision of the law. The corporate provisions are like the boring ones, right? But, the devil's in the details. Dito sila madadali sa ipso facto revocation. I feel this is Section 10 and Section 11 both have transgressions and both say ipso facto revocation. It says how important, it just shows how important this is. Now, for Section 10, no, the first portion, let's say, okay, granted, na the transfer from Pastor Kibuloy to Akobo was done not at the level of Suarez, but at the level of either the holdings company or executive pastor, the Kingdom of Jesus Christ, right?
Yes.
Okay, granted, they did that at that level, but they should have reported to Congress. Now they're saying, like, we did report it in the annual reporting. You could see naman sa GIS, we reflected the change, but that's not the reporting that's required.
It
It
should
says
be.
here very clearly within 60 days. Again, this is an issue with them. They tend to commingle. Kung may issue silang nahanap, they'll try to rely on the annual report when it should be a separate, distinct issue. Like I told you
Mm,
before, right? The section 12, no, not section 12. When I was talking about the 11, when they said
yes.
na, oh, we wrote you a letter, but that was actually part of the annual reports. So same thing here.
Pero
They're saying, actually, we informed you of the change of interest because it
through
was in
the
our
annual report.
GIS. Yeah, but that's different.
Through
You
the
have to do
annual
it 60
report.
days from. If the transfer was made in Feb, why are you going to that 60 days? That's 2 months. It should have been April. Tapos you're
The
going to say it was
60
based on
days.
the in December filing, something like that. So We feel
Ano
like that's
lang,
another transgression.
yes, parang the scapegoat lang nila the annual report when supposedly, is it something, just to give the benefit of the doubt, is it something lawyers of a media corporation should know? I mean that it's a
Yes, I would
different,
say.
because yeah, that's really important. Kong, just
I would
to,
say na these provisions being very specific, these corporations actually should have they should have legal divisions talaga because there's a lot of corporate compliance to be had, a lot of corporate
yes,
compliance to be done. If
for
we're
ex-
looking at corporations that don't even have franchises, right? And they actually have legal offices just to handle with compliance with the AMLC, with the BIR, with whatever field they're in. All the more that these, media corporations, I'd understand maybe perhaps if there would be slight transgressions for you. Kasi may mga franchise rin sa radio station per
mm-mm,
municipality. Maliliit yan. And admittedly, in the committees, there are a lot of mistakes there. But I think,
as big as this one,
right, as big as
diba?
this one, to be talking of national importance, to be not actually national, the Suarez SMNI would even go so far as to share opinions on China, on international relations. And that's another thing
Yes,
that came up in the committee hearing, right? Can we trust a media outfit that has supposedly links to China? But of course, this is something totally different. I don't think it is part of the basis for revocation. It is a basis for caution, definitely. But
yes,
for us to, they were hiding behind technicalities, the foundation, the post, etc., etc. But eh, red flags, red flags.
super, super red flag, especially the spreading or giving premium to pro China narratives. It's something very personal din sa akin. Kong, what are we looking forward in the next hearing, and what are the next steps that na parang dapat abangan namin or we should look forward to regarding this? Do we already have schedule for the hearing of your bill for the revocation, or yes, go ahead, go.
Yeah. For my bill, I don't think it's slated for reading yet. I think it was first reading, but I don't think it's slated yet for the committee level. What we can expect, I do think that the Congress will move on this. I can't say how we will vote. Definitely, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But if the sample size of the committee says anything, I think we're in agreement that this is a violation, that there are violations, grave ones at that. The timeline, I'm not too sure. Hopefully, it will be shorter because, on one hand, we've already threshed out these issues in the previous hearings.
Yeah.
But technically, this is a separate hearing, so we might have to hear them out again. No, but it really depends. But yeah, I think that's what we're looking for. I'm as lost as everyone else. But I do think that this is something that will be tackled, that should be tackled because of the importance of
Kong,
the finally settling this issue. Yeah.
Kong, are you? This is a very personal question for you, but you've seen the attacks against Congressman Nograles. When your bill reaches the committee hearing, are you ready for the attacks that's coming your way, and how do you feel about those?
Yeah. Well, number one, that's part of it. When you go into politics, that's really part of it. No matter whether you file a very controversial bill or not, you gotta be ready to stand up for what you believe in. It's very unfortunate for Congresswoman Nograles, especially coming from Davao, that she was personally attacked. I guess they
No.
really felt that because Suarez being Davao based also, they know her since she was a child. They know her family, so they could really twist everything against her, and I really feel for her. For me, there's not much that they can say that could, I guess, could hurt me. I respect their opinions to an extent, I suppose, but at most, when we've participated SMNI, the only the only the only thing they criticize about us is that we're a rider party list, but kami nakikisaw-saw sa SMNI.
But you're a
Um,
member. But you're a member of the committee.
I'm to those detractors, I can only say like yeah, I am a member of the committee. I am a lawyer. I am a member not only of this committee, of other committees that are related. I'm Committee of Justice, Committee of Legislative Franchises, Committee of and as minority, we really do have to take a if you
Big
would take a
role.
look now, the minority in the party list tend to be stepping up, no?
Yeah,
Because kami yung nagbababad. Not to say that everyone's like, not there, but like you said, like me personally, I like to stay there. I really like
the
my
whole
job in
time,
Congress.
Kong.
Yeah, I
Yes,
mean, you don't just you won't know the whole picture if you don't attend the session, right? And I feel like it is my duty as a member of Congress not only to represent the riders, um, just because we were voted for the riders doesn't mean our job is strictly related to that. In the
for
same
that
sense, when you're voted for a district, you have a say both in your local jurisdiction, in the national,
and
and you can
national.
even vote on matters on other jurisdictions. Because at the end of the day, what happens in other districts could affect yours. In the same sense,
Yes,
here now, what is affecting the country as a whole will affect the riders. And
yes, exactly.
it's unfortunate if they don't agree with what I'm saying. Then there's always a remedy for that. That's what voting is for, no?
Yeah,
That's how democracy works. But this is my stand, and yeah, we're ready to take it on. But I don't think they'll be able to say much aside from that. They would say na parang worse. They would say like riders party list didn't file anything for the riders, but just a simple Google search will already show you. I mean, like you said, we
yes.
attend all these hearings, we file resolutions all the time on MMDA, LTO enforcement. We filed bills. We're waiting on its passage. So I don't think
They
it's
have
for lack of
anything
trying.
against you. Na totoo.
Yeah.
They don't have anything against you. Na
Yeah.
totoo. That's
Well,
that's enough.
I could expect just na sooner or later they will say that I'm from Bicol and I have NPA roots. Probably that's what they're going to say.
Kong, huwag kang mag-alala. Ako nga nang wala akong gano'n, they claim that I have NPA roots. So, same boat.
Wow, see?
Yes,
Yeah, that's their
whoever.
go-to. That's their go-to. They will
Yes.
find something to pin you on. Ah, you're leftist. Actually, maybe they'll see me having coffee with Cong Brosas and Cong Castro. Then they'll take a picture and say na ito, kasama nila, etc.
Yes,
etc.
'di ba? Parang anything that is against what they're saying is part of the CBP, NPA, and DF. And that is, wala, well, I'm sorry. Anyway, Kong, do you have anything that you want to say to everybody, whether it's about SMNI or being if you want anything. Because I've learned a lot and I'm just trying to absorb everything. Kung eto pa ha, I was there the whole time, like the whole three hearings. And then the more, when you explained everything to me, okay, there's a lot more to learn about this. Maybe you want to say hi or anything to our listeners.
Yeah. Ooh, I wouldn't. What can I
Awkward
say?
ka.
Well, I guess just in relation to what we're doing. I mean, like, I encourage everyone to speak against the government. No, I encourage everyone to criticize the government. That's what they're for. But
Yeah.
we do it. We do it measured. We do it on with basis. Let's do constructive criticism and
Kung just to add
let's be
there,
yeah.
yeah, just to add there, I'm a supporter of the administration, but they see me writing objectively about things. So parang, I do not agree with this because like this. So I think that is what Congrod is saying, that we should speak up regarding the measures or the programs, kasi that is the only way that the government will know our sentiments and will know na parang, okay, baka you need to reconsider this or to think about this. Di ba, Kong? And that is one
Yeah.
thing I see from the minority right now, that objective naman, wala namang feelings based dun sa mga arguments, 'di ba, Kong? Kong,
Yeah, well, we
thank
try
you.
to be, but yeah, yeah. Thank you
Yes.
very much just for having me. It was
Kong, thank you.
really good.
As in, thank you so much for answering. I hope that answers a lot of the questions of people from the social media. And this has been Just with Congressman Rodge Gutierrez for the Just in Manila podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye, everyone.